Hi everyone, hello also from me. Well, when you were registering and also just a few minutes ago on the presentation, you most probably have seen that there is another logo just next to the Housing Europe one, and that is Our Homes, Our Deal. This is one of the major initiatives, I would say, of Housing Europe, really looking at the renovation wave and also at how Europe's public cooperative social housing providers are already leading a just transition. And in addition to the renovation wave, or as part of it, we have been very much looking also specifically at the affordable housing initiative and at the new European Bauhaus, and have launched already a series called Affordable Housing Initiative Series. And one of our panel speakers, Michael Kauer from Vienna House, is already featuring in episode 2. We're now looking for our interview for episode 4, so please don't hesitate to go to the website and connect with us via there is an email there that you can write us to. And as Sorka said, we're trying to make it engaging because maybe many of you are starting to be a little bit tired of these digital events. So with us today, we also have Maria Volquier from Visuality, who is a live scriber. And as you're seeing, she's just saying hello in this, I would say, quite nice way. So she'll be really visualizing all the nice inputs that you'll be providing on how these initiatives should be funded, how they should be governed, what we should take into consideration. So we'll be coming back to Maria quite a few times during this conference. And we also thought that having some digital polls and also seeing what our participants are thinking about these topics. I see that now we're at 56 people, so that is great to see. We thought that that will be a nice way to also reach out to you and hear your thoughts. So I will just share my screen and already kick off some of the first questions. Okay, you should be able to see it now. And then if I go on present mode, you can already go to menti.com. That can be done via desktop or your mobile as you wish. And then you need to type the code 696212.1. And we're asking today, what is your mood? Outside is sunny, but how are you feeling? Radiant, a little bit blue, stormy, hopeful, or fed up? Okay, a very good start. Okay. Hopeful. We've tested that internally, and each time there were different results. So yeah, good to test the audience and know how you're feeling. Okay. I'll just leave it a few more seconds because I see answers are coming in. Okay. Still hopeful and radiant are taking over. Seriously, it is fine to be fed up. It happens totally. But basically, yeah, that is how we used to do. Then if we go to another question, then we are really a little bit more going into the topics. And we're asking, what does a neighborhood mean to you? And we're expecting to have some nice word cloud here with different words and highlights. Okay, first answers coming in. Okay, many at once. To live together, it's a community. Yeah, that's yeah. We see some icons. It's good to say that also you can use icons indeed. You need to have to have walking distance. Maybe someone is referring here to the 15-minute city idea. It needs to be safe. It needs to be a friend, inclusive, friendly faces. Wow, there is a lot coming in. Yeah, some related to a childhood. Yeah. Okay. Home, familiar place, solidarity, local market, healthy environment, well-being. Absolutely, especially today. Okay. Reaching out, we're going to share those, but okay, quite a few icons are coming in. Cooperation, proximity of my home. But still, I would say that there are a couple of words that are really coming out. So community, cooperation, safety, and well-being. And okay. And if I go to the next question, which will be our third one for that first step, we are asking, how important should these criteria be in the districts supported by the Affordable Housing Initiative and the new EU Bauhaus? So if you're answering with 0 or 1, then that will be, it has low importance, and the opposite. If you answer with 5, then there is very high importance. And we've added social criteria such as to be efficient, affordable, inclusive, integrated, beautiful, and financed. I would say it's a little bit difficult to choose from those 6 because they're all very crucial, I would say.
Indeed.
But let's see what is really taking over. Okay. Answers are coming in, but I see that we still have only, 9, 10 people. Okay, and as we are really speaking a lot about affordability today, and this is kind of the mantra of Housing Europe, if I can say so, we see that affordable comes first, really very much followed by inclusive, efficient, and then we have integrated, beautiful, kind of competing with each other. Super. Yeah, okay, I see around 20 answers, but I also guess the time is ticking, so I will just stop sharing my screen, but I will be back with some questions in a little bit. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Diana. I think indeed this affordability really has to be the center of our work and a key outcome of the work that we're trying to do. If we look at the moment, 8.1 households have reported to Eurostat that they have difficulty paying for their rent or their mortgage. 20% of unemployed people are risking a fear that they risk to lose their home. So I think this reality check is important. I'm glad that we're all on the same page. So we talked about how the EU has many of these ambitious policies on the table, and therefore we found it extremely important to have indeed a representative of the EU level here today. And I have to say, Ulla Engelmann and her colleagues in DG Grow, in the social economy unit, have really recognized the importance that this renovation wave has to have 2 legs. So it has to have socially inclusive while being ecologically progressive. So Ulla, I know you have a really busy day today because you've been presenting already at this social economy summit, but happy you could join us as well.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Because I think my camera, I don't know what's happening, because this morning it worked for the opening, but it has to do with the setting.
Oh.
So I'm very sorry, and I need then later on, I will also be in the conclusion, see what went wrong in the meantime. But I think
that we have a picture of you there in the screen. So
yeah, so sorry for that.
Yeah, that's no.
Yeah, so thanks, Serja, for the introduction. And as you said, for us, when the discussion on the renovation wave started, it was very important to make the link and to have not only the energy efficiency, but also the question of affordable housing within the renovation wave. So, and that's why we are very happy that now with the recovery package, where renovation is one of the 7 flagships, that within the renovation wave, we have managed what we call AHI, Affordable Housing Initiative. And so I would want to update you a bit what the plans are for this affordable housing initiative and how we want to frame it. Because why we were pointing it out that it is necessary to have it in the renovation wave was due to the major gap in investment to social and affordable housing in the EU, which is estimated to 57 billion per year. So, and then the sector, affordable and social housing, is confronted with 2 main problems: a decline in stocks and quality of dwellings, which is from the supply side, and of course an increasing need for accommodation due to demographic changes and urban-rural imbalances. So at the same time, we have an economy that needs serious investments to recover, and therefore construction is a necessary target. And with the Affordable Housing Initiative, we want to provide support to local long-term public-private partnerships for implementing the renovation of 100 lighthouses, social and affordable housing districts across the EU. And we will support renovation projects to go the extra mile, looking at local priorities in terms of circularity, but also new technologies in constructions and renewables, smart living, social inclusion. That means mobility as well as livability, but also then having an interplay and integrate entrepreneurial spaces, civic fab labs, art and cultural activities, technology centers within these housing districts. And that's why it's also important, as it was said in the beginning, that we make the link with the Bauhaus. And we have a colleague later on who gives you more insight, but we feel that the Affordable Housing Initiative can give a good contribution to the new European Bauhaus. So what we are exactly planning is to launch the EU-level cross-sectorial partnerships, which should kick off in the third quarter of 21. And we really want to support these local public-private partnerships, and then the renovation of the lighthouse districts could start from 2022 onwards. And when we look at this, and why do we go for the district approach? Because we really think we need this combination of technologies like digital solutions, circular and eco-design, the use of renewable energy sources, but at the same time bring in social innovation and have frameworks to empower the residents. So this livability factor and the interactions with the residents is something very important, and that's where we also want them to bring also the social economy dimension in. So this district shall really ensure that all renovated units remain affordable, but they should also demonstrate the replication potential towards other districts. And then the support the renovation of qualitative housing districts. So it should also be that we can learn then these different districts from what they have done and spread the message and knowledge. And therefore, we really, what AHI will do with this EU-level cross-sectorial partnership, not only together construction sector, bring in social housing, local social services, social economy, civil society, cultural associations, local and regional authorities, and financial intermediaries. And that shows probably also by the fact that we are quite many in this discussion, because we need to bring really different players into this affordable housing initiative. And we then want also to look what conditions can we bring in, what financial tools can be used, and we also want to look what are the low-hanging fruits in terms of social housing renovation and worst performing buildings, and at the same time deliver blueprints for local industrial cooperation between construction SMEs and social housing companies. And then also we want to act as a knowledge and networking and central coordination body to facilitate the implementation of this district renovation project. So with this was, let's say, in a nutshell, our plans. But it's not only plans, we have already put in place certain concrete steps so that we can really kick off. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ulla. And I think you hit on a few really important points there. And I also noticed that you have listened a lot to the sector and the needs on the ground. And we're going to continue to do that now, but in the next session. So I hope you can hang on for a while as well, because we're going to hear so the first part, we're going to look at what type of features should these projects have. So Ulla, you've already talked about a few of them, but now we're actually going to hear from the stakeholders from 3 countries. And I'm going to let Natalia kick off straight away to talk about from the perspective of the Danish social housing providers, what is really needed, and what should those projects look like, those projects that are going to push a fair and green transition? I'll let you kick off, Natalia. Hey, you can demute yourself, yeah? Oh, no? You don't have the control there?
Yeah, we could hear her in the beginning when she joined.
Oh, yeah. I've heard that this happened to somebody else on another session. So maybe while we figure that out, Karine, just check if you are able to demute yourself. A little bit strange. You're able to demute? Oh, no, looks like.
We could hear her also in the beginning. That's very strange. And maybe if we try with Dirk, I don't know.
We can try it, no problem.
Oh, yes, it's working. So perhaps as we and Michaela as well is working. So perhaps as we contact the organizers, Dirk, would you kick off with your 7 minutes to give us a bit of an insight into the really innovative and inspiring project that you led there in Berlin?
Yes, I will do. Hello, everybody from Berlin. I'm asked to talk something about the Nether Backplates. From our point of view, it's a kind of innovation and in construction and renovation. And I want to show you why. You can go to the next slide. So first, short introduction to Berlin Building and Housing Cooperative from 1892. It's in our name. We are almost 130 years old. We have about 6,900 dwellings in 10 of 12 Berlin districts. Our members are almost 18,000 last year. And we build houses in all decades. And approximately 60% of our housing stocks are listed buildings. Thereof, 400 dwellings are listed as UNESCO World Heritage since 2008. We have about 85 employees. Our equity ratio is 20%, and our balance sheet is more than 500 million euro. Can go to the next slide. So, the Nether Backplates. We have three components in our project. The first one, it's on figure A, is the expansion of a ground floor zone. The second one is the new residential building. And the third one is the renovation of a residential settlement. We can go to the next slide. And no, go one back. Okay, you see the blue one. The blue one is the old settlement. There were about 150 dwellings. They are constructed in the mid of the 50s and in the mid of the 70s. And the red one is the new building. It was former car garage. And now we can get to the next slide, where we see the first the expansion of the ground floor. We have a new common area, that's the blue one, with almost 150 square meters. And we also added a senior citizen living for 10 elderly people who needs care. It's all in all more than 400 square meters. And what you didn't see is the yellow one. The yellow one are 8 student apartments. And they are also about 300 square meters, which we rented to students. All in all, we created in the ground zone more than 800 square meters. That means we have 8% more space without cutting a tree or something else. And we can go to the next one. Next slide, please. Okay, here you see the new residential building. I told you former it was a parking garage, and we reduced the parking garage. It's right now in the basement. And we built 40 new apartments and 4 commercial units. And we created all in all about 3,500 square meters living and commercial space. And again, without cutting a tree. Next one, please. the renovation of our settlement. All in all, we have more than 170 apartments, 11,000 square meters living space. The construction year was 1956, and especially in 1975. And what is the part, what did we do in the construction? We made a replacement of the windows, a new roof installation. We installed a PV system with a battery storage. We made an energy monitoring during the DREAM project. We have all in all LED lighting. We have new energy saving lifts with energy recovery. And we have a redesign of an outside space. And what we didn't do is to install a new facade. The reason is the buildings had already an isolation. After the first oil crisis in 1974, all new projects from 1892 had an isolation, and that's without legal requirement. As I mentioned, 45 years ago, we started isolation in new products. The next slide, please. So co-ops are very special because there is an identity between the tenant and the owner. Therefore, it's necessary or mandatory in a renovation process to involve our tenants. Co-ops can think long-term about renovation if they don't engage their tenants. We have big plenary sessions with all the residents took place to present the ongoing project as transparently as possible and to secure tenant values. The involvement of local representatives in the planning and in the common areas and the outdoor facilities. And we have a series of households who were interviewed to raise data about living condition and personal needs before and after renovation. And the first time, this is due to the DREAM project, we trained our tenants to green neighbors in sustainability, in energy consumptions, and to prevent the rebound effect. And in the bottom, you see two pictures. Whereas one, go back. Whereas one tenant in the interview, I think it was before the renovation, on the right-hand side, you see a picture from Lyon. That's a picture we made because we got the Erhin Award. And you see on the right-hand side, our tenants, we invited to go to Lyon to get the prize for their project. You can change to the next slide. Next slide, okay. What are the economic and ecological sustainability in our project? We made a balancing of measurements regarding the new energy effect and the cost. That's the reason that we didn't change the facade. We have a creation of new living space without ceiling or new areas and an area for new construction on the former parking garage. And the architecture is also very important for us that favors low energy consumption. We have new living and a common area filled in the so far open ground floor spaces. And we have a compact design on the new building. The renewable energy is very important for us in all projects. And so we installed a photovoltaic system with battery storage for the tenant electricity, either in the renovation and in the new building. And of course, we use renewable materials for the construction when it was possible. And we consider the life cycle cost, that means running cost and construction cost. And maybe that's the reason that we are a member in the 50 out of the box housing solution, which is sponsored by Housing Europe. So we come to the next and last slide. Yeah, what is the social responsibility in our project? From our point of view, we build community facilities for the encouragement of the communities. And we look for different types of housing for a balanced social mix. And we offer affordable housing and try to reduce the running cost. And we support and demand the engagement of tenants and members. And by the way, on this slide, the rent after renovation is still €6 per square meter and month, and the new building is €10 per square meter and month. And maybe these reasons are enough, but we are winner of the Erhin Award in 2019, more than a roof, supporting communities of equal opportunities. So,
Fantastic.
that was the Berlin project Nether Backplates from a very old cooperative in Berlin. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Dirk. I think you've really got us off on the right foot there with this, showing us that there are technical interventions, but a lot of attention and effort on including people and making sure the outcome is good for them as well. So let's move to Natalia. Give us a quick overview of what your expectations would be here.
Hello, can you all hear me?
Perfect.
So this is yeah, super. So hello everyone, and thank you for the invitation. I will just jump right to it. I am so happy today because I'm going to present one of a model, you could say, from one of our housing organizations in Aalborg, which is the 4th biggest city in Denmark. And this housing area is called Aalborg Øst, and it has 20,000 tenants living there. It is a collaboration model focusing on large-scale renovations in socially vulnerable living areas. And it has been developed and is used, and the renovations will end in 2021, and then we will also see the full effects of the renovations. So if we just continue to the next slide, please. As I said, this is an area in the 4th largest city in Denmark. The area was built in a satellite city in the 70s, and it had a great focus on social housing. So since then, the area also grew bigger, and unfortunately, we saw social problems developing. In the past 13 years, there's been a lot of attention on turning the negative development around, and especially in the last couple of years, we have seen significant results due to the co-creation, where the area's actors really came together to improve the life of the residents living there. So issues with low living standard, unemployment, health issues, and general well-being has been tackled. And now the area is really thriving and has also opened up and really become part of the surrounding community and the rest of Aalborg, the rest of the city. Next slide, please. So when we look at the tools, how do we do this? Our primary instrument is a master plan, and the master plan, it sounds like something from Lord of the Rings, but it's not. It is really a combination of the physical and the social development. So of course, we're looking at the physical side of the renovation, the modernization, the densification, how are we planning this area, but then we always combine it with a social development plan, looking really into what are the socioeconomic stats or data of our tenants, what do they need to thrive. So next slide, please. And in the case of Aalborg East, what was really special here, and what was really one of the first types of organization of this kind of master plan development in Denmark, was that we had a field of many actors working together. So obviously you always have a lot of actors, but here it was really a strong collaboration between many actors, and they were all working together to implement both the material and the social master plan. So we had private investors, we had the municipality, we had a local business community, we had the housing association, and then we also had social economic enterprises, and of course volunteers participating in this cooperation. And just the next slide, please, to tell you just a little bit about the concrete actions that were going on here. So the renovations were completed by using a variety of building types, really trying to appeal to a wider residential composition, because we also needed to change the residential composition in this area. We were focusing on improving the outdoor areas and also the contemporary design of the buildings. Then construction field or land within the area was sold to private investors. This was, of course, one way also of getting financing, but it was also a way of getting a stronger cooperation with private developers. and investors, and they have really contributed to the area with freestanding housing blocks, and this also gives the areas an architectural lift, and it also, it looks different, it is densified in a different way. Public and private health offers have been made accessible to the tenants or the residents in the area with a new health house that has been constructed and placed in the center of the housing area. And in the building, you can find general practitioners, dermatologists, a pharmacy, also a dental practice and other health offers. So the health house has more than 10,000 people every year on training courses. And this also makes the area more visible for people outside of Aalborg East, so outside of the housing area, because it is, you have a pharmacy, you have all these kinds of services, welfare services, basically, which means that you have people from outside the housing area communing to this housing area in order to go to the doctor. But you also have a cafe there. This is the social enterprise that I was talking about on the slide before. And then you also have a fitness center. And this fitness center is also open to people outside of the area, but it has targeted initiatives for the tenants living there to really target their health issues and to lift them health-wise. Then the housing organization, who is really a pioneer in this, Himmerland Housing Association, has its local services in this health house as well. So they are quite outwards, and they have their services and their offices within the housing area in order to be close to the residents and really have this open dialogue, and also always to be open for questions and discussions while the renovations are ongoing. Right. So Himmerland Boligforening took over also the secretarial function of the local business network, and they have 180 members, including local companies, but also international organizations like Siemens and Aalborg University. And this network of business is really trying to look into what are the competences and the resources of some of the unemployed tenants, and how can they match them with available jobs within the network. So next slide, please. And these are just really running quickly through, Clara. You can just run really fast through the pictures. I just wanted to show you just some visuals on it. Before and after pictures where you can really see the difference. Here on this, yeah. Okay, yeah, I need to stop. I just want to really be fast at the end and just show you if it works, because this is really important. So we see that the average household income has increased by 19% in the period from 2011 to 2017. And actually for the Aalborg municipality as a whole, the increase was 10%. So it was much higher in this housing area. And then also the criminal judgment in selected categories has actually decreased with more than 50% in the same period. We also see a higher level of education and also in employment rate. So just at the end.
Yeah, super important, this aspect. Great.
Yeah. Do I have 1 minute more?
Oh, we'd like to jump to Karine, but I think you.
Yeah. So just why did it work? These are some of the main points. And I just want to say that we just opened the first self-driving bus shuttle that is also driving through the area, connecting the tenants, especially the elder tenants, to the health house, and it drives all day long. So this is really interesting as well, in cooperation with Aalborg University, just to have the technical side. Yeah, we're really looking at it as unlocked potential, and really looking into these social investments that also Ulla was talking about before. So happy to give you more information, because yeah, I didn't have enough time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And indeed, you took the social impact. I'm sure Frank in the next session will look at. But Karine, let's hear from what the expectations are from Union Sociale pour l'Habitat in France.
Can you hear me? It's okay?
Yeah, we can, yes. Fantastic.
Super. Okay, so here we go. So thanks to Housing Europe for this invitation to speak about European Affordable Housing Initiative. in the context of the renovation wave and the recovery, the economic recovery. So yes, first it's important to say that it's a good signal from Europe, these two initiatives on housing and buildings. So this means that it recognizes that social housing is a pillar of economic, social, and environmental cohesion, and it shows also that we need support from Europe to face the housing crisis and to do the green transition. So yes, we can have a view from the first slide. So yes, at USH, to be successful, we think that the initiative we have to pursue several objectives, and the first and the most important is the improvement of the living condition of the inhabitants, of the residents. Lockdowns that took place this year have shown the importance of the housing condition inside the housing and outside. Inside, indeed, people need space. We need space, and outside, such as access to green spaces. This is very important. It seems to be obvious to say that, but it is important to remember, and the experts who will design the EU initiative must have this aspect always in mind. Of course, the initiative, we have to take into account the accessibility of the affordability of the renovation. It means social rent and social to people, rent accessible for people in need. And in addition, the project supported by the initiative has to be enough representative of social housing districts in Europe to be reproducible. For this, a project will have to respond to need identified locally. I will come back later on this question. Slide 2, please. So here on this slide, there is the selection criteria that the project will have to integrate. Has circular economy, low carbon renovation, integration of architectural and urban development issues. Of course, resident participation, as Natalia said, this is crucial for this initiative and for the renovation in general. And also, this type of initiative have to participate to the development of local economy. And I would like to say also that more and more social housing organizations in France, but also in Europe, implement and integrate these criteria to their project. And the Affordable Initiative, but also the New Bauhaus proposal is a way to go further to the implementation of this criteria. Next slide, please. Can you? Yes. Okay. Thank you. So as I said at the beginning of my presentation, the Affordable Housing Initiative will have to respond to local needs. At USH with my colleagues, we have started to think and to work on a typology of neighborhood that could be interested by the scope of the European Affordable Initiative. So we identified 4 types of districts that are representative of social housing district in France, and we hope in Europe. So there is 4 and other, but we focus on 4 for the moment. So next slide, please. So the first slide is the social housing district. We could say they are very emblematic of the urban sites in France, quite well known. So generally they are located in the big cities or near big cities, and they have social and economic difficulties. An urban and social intervention has been done, or it is ongoing, but with a huge renovation project with different stage in the process of renovation. But there are still areas inside of this district that are not renovated yet. Affordable housing initiative could be an opportunity for these areas. Indeed, this project have a strong engineering capacity. They have good experience on technical and social management. And also, they have a strong support from the local authority, which allows them to carry out ambitious projects in terms of energy transition, social innovation, circular economy, and local employment. Next slide, please. The other district we have identified are in the region that are losing their attractiveness. They are located in shrinking regions. Generally, they are isolated and far from the big cities. Some of these districts have many difficulties, problem of vacancy, demographic decline, with aging people, social problems, social needs, etc. So the renovation of this type of district try to participate to open the space and the social life. And also one of the important challenge of this type of district is to fight against fuel poverty. So and to go to more energy efficiency of the building. There is also an issue to promote social mix in this type of district and also improve in general the living condition. So here also the European initiative could be an opportunity for this type of areas. So next slide, please. So the third neighborhood we have identified are located in industrial areas such as mining towns. So these areas were built during the first half of the 20th century to house workers in small individual houses, generally with small gardens. These neighborhoods have an important architectural and historical interest. And today, this district have significant economic and social difficulties because they are in territory in transition, and they must be renovated in the short and medium term. Also this type of house are very bad energy performance. But the renovation in this type of individual houses are very complex and very costly. So the social landlord and landlords involved in this renovation project aim to offer better quality of housing and increase of energy performance, of inhabitants in the project, and of course social innovation. And they try to implement also in their project circular economy approach with the development of local branch linked to the circular economy principle. Now the last. So next slide, please. And the last areas we have identified in France. This is single houses located in the peri-urban areas. In French, we say Maison Pavillionnaire. They are less visible than large buildings located in the big cities, as I showed you in my previous slide. But these single houses, so Maison Pavillionnaire, represent an important issue for thermal renovation. So they were built before 1975, and they have also a very bad energy performance. So there is a real challenge to accelerate the renovation of this type of houses. And for this type of houses, industrial renovation could be appropriate to aim to reduce the cost of the renovation. So now I think it's time to me to conclude my presentation. So I would like to thank you for the invitation to speak, and also to conclude that we will be very happy to collaborate with the Commission and also with Housing Europe in the initiative. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Karine. And now Diana is going to the audience some time to feed in.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Karine, and thank you also, Dirk and Natalia, for making us a little bit travel to different corners of Europe. Of course, we'd like to go even beyond France, Denmark, and Germany. And I will now open again the Menti. All right. I see that actually someone managed to get access to the question in advance, which is good. So we also want to hear from the audience. We're asking the same question. What features should the district supported by the Affordable Housing Initiative and the new EU Bauhaus have? It's an open question. So we already have a first one coming in saying to promote decentralized renewable self-consumption, in particular renewable energy communities and collective self-consumption. So I'm curious to hear, now we have around 60 people connected, renewable energy. Okay. Change in mobility patterns. All right. So yes, going also what surrounds us, what is around our homes. A circular economy and public green spaces with good light and designed to be inclusive, to make it to do that indeed from the start. Fun and beautiful. I like that. With flowers and greenery, low carbon impact, gender sensitive urban planning. I need to scroll down. Improving the quality of life and taking into account that a lot of tenants do not live in social housing but in private housing. Biodiversity considerations. Okay. I'm slightly guessing that that might be my colleague Clara Mafia, but I'm not sure. Social infrastructure, potential to upscale renovation techniques, sustainable water treatment. Okay, really, more things are coming up. Residents implication, end user focus, tenant mix, very important indeed. Good quality housing from every aspect. Greenery again coming up. And residents have to stay in the neighborhood after renovation. Very important to avoid renovictions as much as possible. Water saving. Really, a lot is coming up, but I know that also time is really ticking, and we are running late. So I will stop now my script sharing, but I'll be very curious if we could see what Maria has done so far, because as you see, there is really a lot of drawing. I wonder, Maria, whether you could maybe share your screen so that we see it a little bit bigger for a second. I don't know whether that is possible. Okay. Maybe not, but in any case, it will be super. Anyways, we'll be sharing all input. So Maria is making each session will be drawn in the show, so we are going to share it on.
Unfortunately, I cannot share my screen, but if people want to see it bigger, they can double click on top of the image.
Ah, that's good. Yes, indeed.
Okay. Good for, good. We're
you can double click on Maria's. Thanks a lot, Diana.
Thank you.
And indeed, Maria, that's starting to shape up. We're starting to see the different features that have been outlined by the last panelists coming through there. And keep in mind, that's going to be taking shape throughout the rest of the session. So let's move on. Yes. We've looked a little bit about what the features, so what the social housing providers, the representatives that spoke, what they see the most important features should be, and we've heard a little bit back from those attendees who fed into the Mentimeter. And now we're going to turn to the European Investment Bank, and Frank Lee is going to kick off our session on looking at how the initiatives should actually be funded. And obviously, it's a key role. It's a key question as we as we kicked off, we reminded that social housing providers are faced with multiple challenges on the social side and on the environmental side. So obviously the cost is crucial. We can't get away from that. So Frank, let's hear what you have to say.
Thank you very much, Sorcha, and good afternoon, everyone. Hopefully you can hear me well.
Yes, perfect.
Yes, I can see you nodding. Great. Yeah, I'm curious to see what Maria produces in respect of financing, boring old financing presentations, but let's see what comes out of this. I've obviously tried to keep it as entertaining as I can, and I will try and cut down my intervention because I realize that we're also running a bit late. I mean, the title is funding, which is interesting as opposed to financing, and I think that's quite a relevant point because obviously funding is both financing in the sense of something that you need to pay back, and it's also funding from other sources like grants, obviously in particular. And I think it's important that that the sector obviously blends those two forms of funding in the most optimal way. Now, the funding is obviously primarily coming from EU budgets, but obviously from national budgets as well. And I think the colleagues obviously have read probably on the Renovation Wave and other numerous EU initiatives that are now coming out in the current multi-annual financial framework. And that's important, obviously, to be aware of what they are and what they're targeting and what sort of projects they're looking to support. On the actual financing side, obviously, we are amongst many providers of financing in the sector. Looking at the numbers, obviously, these are numbers primarily across the EU, which is our main market, as we are the EU bank per se. So over the last 5 years or so, around about 10 billion of lending has gone from us into the housing projects. Actually, I should say actually that overall in the urban sector, it's something like 110 billion. So the actual housing element of things is a relatively small fraction of our lending to urban altogether, but that doesn't necessarily reflect a small percentage only going to housing, because in some cases we lend to municipalities for all sorts of things, including housing, and they then get counted in a more general statistic, let's say. And the majority of that is done through direct lending, where we actually lend to one specific borrower. But more and more of our activity is being focused also through intermediaries, which allows us to obviously reach the smaller projects. If we move to the next slide, please. Right, I think if you can just keep pushing it, because I think, yeah, there you go. So this is a bit of a busy slide, but it was really just to highlight the different ways in which EIB contributes to the sector. Obviously, we have an advisory and technical assistance capacity within EIB. It's primarily channeled through what we call the European Investment Advisory Hub. This is something that will continue under the Commission's control under InvestEU in the future, and will be called the InvestEU Advisory Hub. But we also have of course, other mandates, primarily from the Commission, which we channel to support project preparation and implementation. And of course, that includes the Eleanor facility that some of you probably have heard about, which is also doing quite a lot in the area of housing renovation in particular. We then have different forms of financing. There can be direct loans to housing associations or municipalities, etc. And they can be in the form of what we call framework loans, which actually allows for that borrower to actually finance a multitude of projects over a period of time, say 3, 4, 5 years. So it allows for us to put together groupings of numerous small projects that a municipality, for example, may have, or a housing association. And then we have investment loans, which is typically project specific. So a very large individual project that we might be financing with one particular borrower. And then, as I was saying before, we also have structures where we channel our funding through intermediaries. We work a lot, as you probably know, with national promotional banks, but also with specialized intermediaries, commercial banks across Europe primarily. If we move to the next slide. So just a few examples of what we have been doing in Europe. We are relatively active across Europe, from north to south and east to west. Essentially, some examples, some names that you probably recognize there. Pretty interesting activities going on in France. Apologies, this map hasn't come out too well, I think, in the slide conversions, but I think you know where the arrows should be pointing to. So intermediated stuff that we do with the CDC group in the National Promotional Bank in France, which is interesting stuff. We also work with other international financial institutions like the Council of Europe Bank, doing stuff with them in France, in Spain, Portugal, etc. We also couple our funding in some cases with the structural funds. A very good example of this is in Portugal, IFRU it's called, which is a financial instrument set up using structural funds and combines with EIB and CEB funding for urban regeneration, including housing support. We have things called investment platforms, which are instruments that have been set up a little bit like financial instruments to channel funding under the European Fund for Strategic Investment, the so-called Juncker Plan money, which again, we hope will continue under InvestEU. There as well, working with national promotional banks such as BGK in Poland. And we also have been doing some interesting stuff, mainly in Eastern Europe, where obviously models are less developed in terms of funding, but helping, for example, municipalities to set up off-balance sheet financing vehicles to essentially attract long-term debt financing without it necessarily affecting the public sector balance sheet. So moving on, I think I'm almost towards the end of my slide. Indeed, I think this is the last slide. When Sorcha and I were discussing, what do we want to really talk about in the limited time we have together, I think there was perhaps this agreement that we should put across what we feel from an institutional investor's point of view, what we feel to be the ingredients for success in order to attract long-term, relatively affordable financing from the likes of the European Investment Bank, but obviously from other organizations as well, clearly. And these are points which to some extent have come out in my presentation before. I mean, obviously, as an EU institution and like a lot of large institutional investors, it is difficult for us to actually finance individual small projects. And we do that in one of two ways. Essentially, we either do that through intermediaries, as I was saying before, which could be national promotional banks, etc., or we work with borrowers who actually have that capacity to pull together a number of projects under their control and under their jurisdiction. And it could be a number of projects which span over several years of implementation. So engaging with borrowers and engaging with intermediaries, this is often what we look for in order to create scale and efficiencies, which then just make it easier for us to finance these things with larger amounts of funding. Intermediation is part of that, i.e. the ability to actually bring our funding together with other financing and funding from other sources. Again, EIB typically doesn't finance more than 50% of a particular project cost. So we are always looking for other partners to provide financing and co-financing. An interesting point to discuss is whether it makes more sense for a lender to be looking at projects which have a homogeneous risk profile, as we call it. So in other words, projects which have which are quite similar to one another in terms of what we perceive to be the underlying risk, or whether it's actually better to mix things up and to actually diversify the risk a bit more. I would say, in general, it's bankers tend to like things that look the same. It's easier for us to analyze things and understand things and get our necessary approvals to do things. So probably homogeneous risk is the thing that we tend to favor. We obviously also recognize that financing and funding is certainly not the solution to everything. It's clearly important, as we saw in the survey that was done earlier on in this workshop. But essentially, critical often is advisory and technical assistance to help prepare projects, to help do energy audits, for example, to do financial analysis and modeling work, all this upfront work that needs to be done. And of course, all the work that gets done on the ground, as was highlighted in the previous presentations, you know, there's a huge amount of work that gets on to combine all these different actors, bringing together the social, the economic, the environmental aspects to things, making sure that it's not just a housing project, that it is a wider reaching urban regeneration type scheme in one way or another. And in that respect, we are also quite excited about some new models which seem to be coming out in the market, things that are more linked to social outcomes as opposed to input costs, for example. And we are doing a bit of work in some countries across Europe, looking at models, particularly, for example, in homelessness, and other ways in order to encourage social innovation, essentially, by encouraging the public sector to procure services and funding by focusing more on outcomes and less on inputs. So I will stop there. I've probably even overrun my time, but thanks very much for the invitation.
Thank you, Frank. And we've invited for a quick reaction before we move on to the governance. We've asked Bjorn Mallens, the director of the Federation presenting Flemish social housing providers, just to react to your comments. Bjorn? We can.
Perfect. No, I think I can give some insights, because we actually have EIB, European Commission funded program running at this moment. Actually, this is even more than running, because it started operational last year, which is Aster. And we got a grant from Elena to set it up. I think it was very important to get this Elena fund to explore the possibilities that are available and ways of financing and funding what can actually make a difference at a local level. And I mean, at this moment, of course, local, at a regional or national level, and ways of social housing investments, or more broader investments in renovation, energy efficiency in the housing market. Why is it important to get these kinds of technical assistance funds? It's because I think every country in Europe has different needs and ways of funding and financing schemes. For instance, in Flanders, the rates we have to pay for government funding in ways of social housing are not high. Even the contrary, at this moment, Flanders is getting loans at a negative rate. So access to money is, for instance, in Flanders, not a problem. I know that in other countries in Europe, Eastern Europe, Southern Europe, accessing large funds for financing social housing might be a problem. So I think it's very important to have all these broad-scale approaches from the European Commission, all the funding and financing opportunities, but also have the time to look at the concrete translation of it in an operational working scheme at the national level. And I must be very honest, it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of time just to look at all the financial legislative implications. It's not simple to try to access, for instance, what we are doing with Aster. We will invest a volume in photovoltaic installations, which is more or less the total annual volume in PV in Flanders. So we will add quite some extra capacity in energy sustainability there. So it's not easy to get it up and running. It's not like going to a bank and having like, we need 250 million euros. Well, banks tend to be, as Frank also said, quite conservative in ways of dealing with risk. So it takes a lot of time, and we actually needed the funding we got from the Elena project to have all these consultancy and law firms fees to get it up and running. And also you have to take your local government with you, because you can't set this kind of things up in a, let us call, social housing, semi-public sector. We can discuss how, much it's in the public or in the private sector, but in a way, we're providing something that needs to be provided in a more or less public orientated sector. And then, of course, you have to get some involvement of your local government to give you the opportunity to set this kind of schemes up, because in the beginning, they weren't so convinced that what we tried to do, and it was actually doing quite a large investment, about 20-25% of the annual investment budget in social housing in Flanders, mostly using an intermediate structure and access private funding. So it's not that the government was so eager to get involved, because first of all, of course, they lost control. I think it's very important when we think about setting up alternative ways of investment in social housing. It's very important that you realize that government will lose a bit of control. And my experience in doing this for over 10 years is that governments, one way or the other, they don't like to pay, but they like control. And what's best for governments is very often to have a lot of control without having to pay a lot. So especially in social housing, I think you have to see the government as a partner, not try to set up things next to the government, but just take them in the bath, as we say in Dutch, and then just involvement from the start in what you're doing. Because also at a certain moment, well, anyhow, it was the case in Flanders, we had to change legislation. Because social housing is based in Flanders, the financing model is based on a differential rent. So social tenants pay a part of their income. We can't control it, we can't steer it in any way. What we tried to set up with Aster, with the Elena funding, was a kind of self-provision, self-paying model. So we needed to be sure that there was enough money coming in from the installation. And we had to change legislation to make it possible to work with what we at that moment called the split incentive model. So part of what people are gaining through the installation of solar panels, they will get as a kind of reduction on their energy bill, and they will pay the investment with it. But we had to make very sure that politicians, government, the minister were convinced of what we were doing. And of course, when you have them, let's say it as a kind of guarantee, but it's not really guarantee, but you can explain to your local government, your national government, regional government, that you have a grant passed by the European Commission, European Investment Bank, European institutions. Of course, that makes it a lot simpler to actually convince them to step on board. Okay, yeah, 5 minutes is very short. No, so I think the very important lesson is one, go to the local level, try to translate it, and make sure that you take your time to experiment and to see how you can set up something that's working, and take your local government with you. And a second thing, and that's a tiny bit of advice to the European Investment Bank, but Frank said it also, that they're looking for rather big investment schemes. And
yes, segregation, indeed.
That's what we have noticed very often when talking about the investment itself, not the Elena grant, but the investment. European Investment Bank had something like, yeah, you should scale it up a bit. And in a way, we had the idea that we were scaling it up quite a bit. Well, the local politicians thought it was very big. And at the same moment, the volume we could invest was not big enough for the European Investment Bank. So there, I think we should think about opportunities, indeed, with working with intermediate structures or combining, pooling instruments that are more or less the same, and to put them together, and even, why not, try to do that in a framework for instance, at the national level or at the European level, where an organization like Housing Europe, also so VVH in Belgium, can actually look at similar projects to bring them together to get that scale also to access the direct European Investment Bank funding, because now we very often see that the budgets are a bit too little from the EIB perspective, but to take the risk from local level are very big. Thanks.
A really important point, and I think we see some alignment between yourself and Frank there. And we're not going to go to the Mentimeter now, but we will go to after the next session. But do click on Maria's drawing, seeing how she's portraying homogeneous risk and bringing governments into the bath. I'm very curious to see that. So now let's jump to how should this be governed, and we're going to hear from Energy Cities. First of all, Adrian is going to give us a quick input there from the city's perspective.
Hello, yes, indeed. And thank you for having me. This has been a really fun event, not just learning about energy recovery and lifts in Berlin social housing, but it's really, really interesting. From the Energy Cities perspective, and we're a network of about 1,000 cities across Europe, and we focus mainly on energy, which of course impacts energy poverty, which impacts affordable housing. But the issues are very much the same when it comes to governance. And so this is an example from Flanders, actually, from Leuven. Their organization, Leuven 2030. And essentially, the role of the cities in governance is deciding who gets invited to the table, how long they need to stay there for, right? We don't, in all the discussion, it's clear, I think everyone here agrees, we need really broad coalitions that bring in a variety of concerns and working together to find compromises and ways forward toward a common goal, right? And that's what Leuven has with Leuven 2030. It have 60 founding members from a wide swath of society. They're now up to 600 members, and they're working towards a shared goal of a climate neutral city in a lot of different ways. One of the key lessons that I've learned from Leuven 2030 is that in building that coalition and inviting all those people to the table, not everyone needs to be there all the time. Especially when you're dealing with citizens or tenants, it's enough to make sure that you understand their concerns and you have the necessary trust to be able to go away and address them, so that you don't risk wearing people out and asking too much of them. Everyone has busy lives, and the same applies with academic entities, civil society, and everything else. The city has a really ideal place at the table to help ensure that the right conversations are dealt with by the right people, so that everyone works together towards that shared common goal. So in Leuven, I'll show you on the next slide, they've got 3 experiments that they're running, experimental districts. Now this is a district energy transition that they've been running, and honestly, it's just really, really cool. I think it embodies everything that we need to do in our cities as we work towards a 2050 goal. And whilst they don't address affordable housing explicitly, it's very much implicitly in there when you look at their strategic objectives, which is about understanding the social value case, the benefits of large-scale community renewal, working with the community and tech suppliers, and building up a local supply chain. Those are all taken directly from their strategic objectives. And the complex challenges that they face, I think, are very similar to the ones faced in social housing developments, where you're looking at how do you mobilize citizens individually and as a community? How do you characterize the full economic value proposition of what it is you're trying to develop in terms of a climate resilient city, and a welcoming and inclusive community? Trying to value that stuff financially is obviously, it's a big challenge, and it's not straightforward. They've got 2 other experimental design districts, which are really, really great. I just wanted to give that brief overview. I honestly don't think this is massive news to the people here in this group. So in the interest of wrapping things up quickly and moving on to Michaela from Vienna, who I really want to hear from, I'll actually leave it at that. And if you have any specific questions about Leuven is doing and how other cities are adapting, I'd be happy to address those. The other example I was going to give was an event in Manchester yesterday that was looking at social housing. But again, it's just reinforcing that role of cities in bringing people together so you can deal with really complex shared issues. All right?
Yes, a quick sum up, and good to hear that some inspiring examples from Leuven, which is not so far from here from Brussels, so we can even go and see it with our own eyes when things open up. Michaela, I would love to hear your perspective on this. This is Michaela Kawa.
Yes. Okay. Thanks a lot. And I think that what Adrian was saying is exactly. I mean, I can immediately continue with your last words about the role of cities in all this and in the governance of the Affordable Housing Initiative and the new European Bauhaus. And when I was thinking about that, I thought about a project, obviously, that we have in Vienna. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. But I think that what cities typically do, they put people at the center. So can I have my first slide, please? That would be lovely. Cities put people at the center. And this is something no one else would do automatically or naturally as cities and their administration and their governments. Because obviously when something is working, nobody's going to say, thank you, Mr. Mayor. But when something is not working, they will all come to the mayor. So mayors have a natural instinct to listen to people and to involve people. I think this is one of the core lessons when we also talk about good governance in the context of these two important initiatives. And putting people at the center does not only mean listening to them, it's actively involving them, asking them, making them contribute, empowering them, and emancipating them. And I think the latter is a very important keyword because we are talking now in the mindset of the Commission, as far as I understood it, especially with the Affordable Housing Initiative, about rather deprived neighborhoods or neighborhoods who are not so well off. So here, the emancipation factor is something that we should clearly look at. That doesn't, fall from heaven. It's nothing that just happens as such. You have to organize these things. So what you should do when you talk about good governance, involve capable stakeholders. That means people are stakeholders, but obviously also the whole social and economic pattern that you will find in that area is important to co-design, co-manage, and even co-own the whole process. And I think that this is also something that is vital when we want to come to a very important goal, which is when we have these new nice neighborhoods which have been refurbished in a socially, economically, and ecologically sustainable way, how can we protect them from speculation and eviction? It has been said in a little bit in the Mentimeter already. How can we secure that they stay there? So here, clearly, there is a role also for the city government. We have seen that in the Corona pandemic. Many cities have taken strong interventions, strong steps to protect their citizens from being evicted and from being able to stay in their safe homes. So I think here, clearly, there's a role on the local level, very much on the national level, because typically rent law is something where you have, this is a national competence in most of the countries. And we have also an element of EU responsibility here, because when it comes to gentrification that has been induced by big speculation, hedge funds buying our cities to protect these neighborhoods from being, gentrified and financialized to a I would say, wrong and unhealthy extent. What is important when we talk about good governance, in my understanding, is also that we all set the goals, both on the local level when it comes to the project, but also on the EU level when it comes to the design of those initiatives. in a very transparent and accountable way. So setting the goals, it's quite clear. This is part of the exercise now. So I'm very thankful and grateful to Housing Europe for organizing the event, because it allows us to share all of these views. But setting processes and goals in a transparent and accountable way would also mean, when are we starting to talk about, I would say, things like indicators? How are we going to choose those neighborhoods who are going to become a lighthouse project? When I talked about this the first time with my colleagues back in Vienna, I said, okay, how many lighthouse projects do they need there in Brussels? Can you tell us? We can, name a number. So I think that all the examples we have seen in the beginning of this session, they are already in themselves, they are lighthouse projects, because a lighthouse project is something that brings light to the life of people. And this is how we should define it. But talking in a little bit more pragmatic way, we will need indicators and monitoring tools to see how this is all going. And I think it's also important, this is a lesson we have learned, at least in Vienna very much, account for a multi-level, multi-stakeholder framework, and be aware that the whole process should create reliable housing systems in the end and contribute to stability in the sector. I think that this is really vital, because we have had enough of the crisis. We have had enough of the crisis in the housing sector after the global crash in 2008, 2009. We have enough of the crisis now. We need to do something about the climate crisis. We need to do something about the social crisis and economic crisis that is coming to us in the aftermath of this corona pandemic. So we have had enough of the crisis. So what has to happen now is we need to create reliable housing systems. And I just want to have my last slide, maybe, for nearly last slide. Please, if you can go. It's talking about life, basically. No, the one about let's talk about life. Sorry, it was my mistake. Yeah. Next, the one before. Yeah, one before. Next, that's it. What do we need when we discuss a little bit more the framework that we would need for those initiatives? We are now talking about communities. We are talking about neighborhood, and that means we are going to talk about people, human beings. And human beings need to feel that the place where they are is a place that they love and they can really enjoy. And I think that this is something which also has a very strong element of a lifelong perspective. We should reflect that also, this long-term perspective, in the way we finance and govern this, and in the way with regard to the rules we create on all governance levels. So sustainability and corporate social responsibility should be key principles. One of my ideas, how to involve stakeholders in such lighthouse projects, especially with regard to the affordable housing initiative, would go say, okay, all of you, please sign the wonderful and well-established code of conduct of the European Responsible Housing Initiative. Go and sign the declaration. I mean, I'm doing, a little bit of product placement for Housing Europe and the International Union of Tenants now. But I think that this is a project where corporate social responsibility, by the way, funded by DG Grow in the beginning, has set a number of standards, how landlords, how cities, how neighborhoods can contribute to a good life and a good neighborhood for all, in all aspects of sustainability. And last but not least, let me just mention what we should keep in mind now, and this is not only because of the corona pandemic and what it has done to our housing sector and the way we see housing now. Housing is a right. It's not an asset, and it's not a charity. This is why also we need to have long-term, stable investment and financing conditions for cities. And this is also why we need a little bit more clarity about the funding of these two initiatives in the end, because cities need this kind of information in order to be able to start with. Okay, so that was my contribution. There are a few links I would like to share, but yeah, Soka, you know me, I can talk for hours, but I stop now. Thank you very much.
Really crucial points, Michaela, on the financing there to finish and putting people at the center. And now you mentioned the Responsible Housing Awards, and we also very much hope that the Bauhaus will take a look at the Responsible Housing Awards and help it, use it as input into your thinking. So Alessandro Rancati, sorry to keep you waiting, and welcome from the Joint Research Centre. Can you give us a little update on what your work is involving and how it can link to the Affordable Housing Initiative potentially?
Yes, thanks a lot for the minutes. How many minutes do I have? Just to, because I see that we are a bit late. So
yes, I really only 5, because then they
only
are
5.
Expecting us back in the probably already. But they also started a bit late. But yeah.
Okay, but then just to let you know, if there is no time enough today, you know that we have some info sessions that give an overview of the project. We're also starting what we call activation sessions. So in reality, I love what Michaela just said, because it's a lot of things that we need to have in place, but we also know that a lot of those things are already in place, and then there are a lot of examples across Europe of how these things are happening. And this is, in a certain sense, the approach of the new European Bauhaus, and the philosophy behind that our president brought forward, which is, let's focus on what it's already existing, that it's telling us where we want to go. Let's give it a look. Let's try to understand how that works, and let's try to see how that can inspire future policies. And so the first real action that we're working on is this sort of listening mode, where we are collecting and we're inviting everyone from citizens to people like you with different roles, and even in your role as citizen, regardless of your institutional role, to come to the website and share examples, ideas and challenges, so that we nurture this, or we nourish this design phase with the views and the examples that already exist, so that we don't reinvent things, and especially we start by highlighting what is happening around us. And that's also the idea of the first wave of prizes. We're not going to create prizes for something that needs to be started from scratch. This year, we're going to focus on prizes that highlight what of good is already being done. And so that's the philosophy, right? And so the big need that we have now is to really get the conversation started in the different communities, and for this we need your help, the help of networks, the help of cities, the help of organizations that can reach to the different levels of businesses, organizations and citizenship, and work in order to create conversations. So I'm just going to share with you super quick the one page of our let me see. This is screen 2. A page of our website. And so you see it here. It's New European Bauhaus in Europa.eu, and we have this co-design phase. And these are the entryways to really contribute to the project now.
Yeah, we can't see the screen, or at least I can't. Okay, I think something is coming up. Super. Yeah.
Yeah, so there you go. Okay, and so these are the entry points, and to help us co-design this initiative. And the ways are basically to host a conversation, and this is essentially a way to say, well, this is a form of engagement with your stakeholders, with citizens, depending on at what level you are. If you need help, let's talk, and we organize these conversations together, and then we have a way to harvest what comes out of the conversation. Or this is easier. You can share examples, ideas, or challenges, and we have entry point for that. Or let's say that you have already papers and essays and the studies done, and you want to share that. Well, let's collect that also. And then we're working on how we then return all this material to the community, so that it's not just us making sense of it, but it's essentially all of us making sense of it. If this is really a movement, like in the aspiration that we have, the movement is not only let's say, responsibility of one actor. It's the whole movement that moves forward. So that's a bit the approach and the idea. And so with this, I would really stop here. Invite you to ask questions maybe in different moment, or join one of the info sessions, and we'll be really happy to answer to your questions. Now the problem, I don't know how to stop sharing. Okay.
Thank you very much, Alessandro. Really interesting. In the meantime, Soraka needed to go to the main stage, so to wrap up our session. But I would just say a few words in conclusion. So first, and basically I'll take it from where you left the conversation, that really, I think all of us here are really thinking that this should be a collaborative task for both initiatives. And we have housing providers, we have cities from all across Europe. So this is also what we are trying to do. And I would really like to invite the panelists here, but also people who are still in the audience. If you'd like to share your organization's views about the series, please, you're welcome to do so. Just get in touch with us, and we're doing this very nice short episodes where you'll be able to answer up to those questions. How should the initiatives be governed? How should they be financed? And how should they look like? What process you'd like to see? So that will be very much helpful. We'll be also in touch with you again. We saw a request about the presentations to be shared. So the links that Michaela couldn't share, they'll be spread out. And let's stay in touch. And we'll be really looking forward also, Maria, to see what you've been drawing and putting together. I really hope that this will really represent everybody's input today. So thank you very much for staying until the end. Really appreciate it. And let's really stay connected. Thank you.
Before we get to the second part of our panel, we would like to give the chance to the workshop hosts who have been working for 90 minutes interactively to present their results. And for this, I would hand over to my colleague Björn to give them the opportunity to, give us a wrap up, and also to give you and Ulla a wrap up about what they have been actually working on.
Yeah, and I think we should differentiate it a little bit more. Not a wrap up like we had the last time. It's more a wrap up. And I won't wrap for you, but we have the two.
Try.
I should try. No, I'm more in the movement thing, We had two workshops, very interesting workshops, and I would love to welcome our first session host, Socha Edwards, Secretary General from Housing Europe. And this is the workshop also mentioned by Ulla. And she will explain and tell us briefly, once she's up, what they did in their workshop. And there she is. Hello, can you hear us? Can you see us? Socha.
Hello.
Hello, can you hear us?
I can hear you perfectly.
Thank you, very good. So first question would be, just in briefly, where you're currently streaming from, and just in 1-2 sentences, what is Housing Europe and your role over there?
So I know you are streaming from a former theater, former cinema.
Yeah.
A colleague pointed out, at the moment, at least here in Brussels, they're all former cinemas with not many cinemas working, and I'm streaming from our former office, so I'm the only one here, as we're still all working from home. Yeah, so here in Brussels, so it's the headquarters of Housing Europe that represents the cooperative, social and public housing providers.
Okay,
yeah.
So then we would love to give you the opportunity to just briefly in 3 minutes to explain and tell us a little bit what you did in your workshop and what the results are. And being this said, I would hand over to you and start the clock.
Yes, I was going to say, please put your clock there, because I don't really have, it's quite difficult to keep track of the time. Yeah, I mean, it was a complex exercise, but at the same time, a simple one. So we had representatives from cities, from local social housing providers, And then among the participants, also who were also taking part in the discussion, also social service providers. So that was on the one side. And then what we were looking at were these new initiatives coming through from European Union level, which we see as very positive developments. So we see the Bauhaus, which is asking us to look at how we live together. And we see, as Ulla mentioned, the affordable housing initiative that was introduced as a component in the Renovation Wave. We also see, we will see over the next few days, the presentation of the action plan for the social pillar. So we see some positive initiatives from the European Union side. At the same time, we see those motivated stakeholders who really want to bring these lofty ambitions that we have as a society and as the European Union to fruition. So what we try to do is bring the two sides together and look at, okay, we have some time to work on this together. How can we make sure that those tools are actually useful for citizens and that they actually do help to tackle what is really on citizens' minds and many citizens' minds at the moment, and that is social exclusion, that is loneliness, that is unemployment, that is lack of accessible homes, and of course, lack of affordable homes. So how can we bring those two sides together, look at the real needs on the ground, make sure they're informed by those real needs on the ground, and come up with something that works and that contributes to those efforts. So we looked at and we focused in on the affordable housing initiative. We said, okay, how should it be organized, how should it be, how should it look on the ground? What should be the features of what we're calling pilot districts, which will show the way for an affordable and green transition? How should it be financed? More tricky, because you've got a lot of diverse projects on the ground looking at a lot of elements, but what you want at the level of, let's say, we heard from Frank Lee from the EIB, what they want to see is homogeneous risk. So we want to make it as simple as possible to access the finance. So have the innovation on finance going on, but the innovation on the ground, not get it in the way of the innovation on the ground. And we looked also, last point, on governance, who should be involved, all of the stakeholders around the table today. So that in a nutshell.
Okay, thank you. So would you say in one sentence or two, was your workshop successful and are you happy now afterwards?
I'm happy, but I would love to go for a beer with everybody. It's so frustrating in those situations because we started a lot of conversations that we need to continue, we need to go into detail, and we need to do that face to face. But no, very happy, and thank you so much for bringing us on board today.
Thank you for joining and for giving those interesting insights also. Yeah, thank you.